Hello again, Team Gunmetal. Today we are going to talk about a whole bunch of different calibers. We're going to look at a couple of them here up close, and we're going to kind of compare them to each other and see what their differences are. So let's start out with some really well-known stuff here. These here are rimfire cartridges. Okay, this first one here. This is a 17. This is just a little 17 cartridge, or 17 HMR rather. Sorry about that. This is just a little 17 HMR rimfire cartridge made by Hornady. Generally, these are intended for shooting varmints, small game, things like that. These are really fast moving, and of course, it is a rimfire round. It is not a centerfire cartridge. Next to it, we have the 22 LR Colibri, which uses just the primer. There's no powder in that one. Next to that, of course, we have the 22 Magnum, which is, quite a bit bigger than its little brother here. Everybody knows the 22 LR. This is one of the most prolific calibers on the planet. Everybody knows the 22 LR. But its bigger brother, the 22 Magnum here, has quite a bit more powder in it. But the other interesting factor on the 22 Magnum is that it has a slightly different diameter. So loading a 22 LR into a 22 Magnum cylinder may be possible, but loading a 22 Magnum into a 22 LR cylinder, that's not going to happen, or chamber, or however you want to go with it. So they do differ in their diameter, just slightly. All right, so moving on here. These are obviously 12 gauge cartridges, or shells, I guess. This is I believe it's a 9 pellet, 9 pellet double-aught buck from Wolf. Simple, cheap buckshot rounds. You can see how big the pellets are. And then we have these little law enforcement mini buck shells here that I've got in my hand. This is from a company called Nobel, or Nobel Sport, however you want to go with it. They've got the FPS right on them. They're meant for law enforcement. They're 1,250 feet per second. And these, again, are double-aught buck. Now, conversely, these here are the 2 3/4 inch shells. And these are the 2 1/4 inch mini shells. You can see the size difference there. But something else I want to point out is that this measurement here, the 2 3/4 or the 2 1/4, is after the shell's been fired. After. Not before. It is for after the shell has been fired. Another way you can tell if a shell is a high-powered shell, or even a meant for big game or anything like that, or even defense, is how high the brass is. The higher the brass, the more powder is in it, and the more strength the round needs to be able to handle, or the more force the round needs to be able to handle. So they tend to put much higher brass on certain shells. So those are the 12 gauge ones there. Let's see here. What do we got? These are all pistol cartridges. So let's get a little closer to those and see what we got piece by piece. These two are interesting. Now, they're very simple. They're just 9mm. Both of them are just 9mm cartridges, but the size difference in the bullet is interesting. You'll hear that bullets often have an overall length difference, or a maximum overall length, and you can see that pretty well demonstrated here. Both of these are hollow points, but one of them obviously has a longer bullet in it than the other one does. And you can see here, you see this little line right there. That is the bottom of the bullet right there. It goes all the way down to right there. It's kind of hard to see on this nickel case one, but I think it's right there as well. So again, you can see that there is a size difference there. Another interesting factor with this bullet here is the rating. You see that? It says +P+. that means that this thing has a heck of a lot of powder in it. And you need to be careful if you're going to shoot something like this, and be careful that your gun is actually rated for +P+ rounds. Now, this one here is just a normal Winchester 9mm hollow point, whereas this one is a Winchester +P+. I'm guessing it's a PDX round, but it may be a different one. I would have to look that up a little bit more and find out what I'm looking at there. So those are a couple of 9mm shells. Here's 3 other ones that you may have heard of, but maybe have not seen before. This one here is a 380. That's just a 380 auto there. This one with a silver bullet in it, and no, it won't kill werewolves. This is a 32 auto. You guys, I'm sure, have heard of the 32 auto. Now, you see the difference in diameter there, 0.32 versus 0.38, right? There's a difference in diameter. And this last little guy here, this is a centerfire cartridge, but this is a 25 auto. That is one of those bullets, one of those cartridges that everyone's heard of, but a whole lot of people don't usually get a chance to actually shoot one or actually see one in person. So 0.25, not a whole lot bigger in diameter than something like a 22. You see, they're pretty doggone close in diameter there. Pretty doggone close. Not quite, but pretty close. And the other significant difference, obviously, is that the 22 is actually a rimfire versus the 25 being a centerfire. So, moving on. The other thing I wanted to compare for you guys is I'll put the 25 down and the 32 down and grab this 9mm again. Now, you see you've got the 380 and you've got the 9mm. Different case length there. Also, different overall length there. A lot of people get confused with the 380, mainly because another name for the 380 is 9mm Browning, 9mm Kurtz, 9mm Corso. There's a whole bunch of different names for the 380 that sound like and look like 9mm. But the 9mm Luger, this one here, the 9mm Parabellum, which is this one here, this one has a whole bunch of different names as well. 9mm Luger, 9x19, 9mm Parabellum, 9mm. There's just a whole bunch of different names for this one as well. So it can get confusing, but remember to check your ammunition when you load it into your range bag. Make sure you're getting the correct caliber, especially if you have both of these in your closet or in your safe, okay? All right, moving on. This one here is a simple round that a lot of police departments are currently carrying, the 40 Smith & Wesson. We all know the 40 Smith, right? This one is just a simple full metal jacket round, nothing too, revolutionary or anything like that. But the interesting thing is the round that the 40 Smith & Wesson was derived from. The round sitting next to it here is, this one here is a 10mm, okay? 40 millimeter 10mm is basically the exact same diameter as .40. Pretty gosh darn close. So you can see that these are pretty much the same exact diameter. The difference is the case volume. You see how much taller the case on the 10mm is versus the 40 caliber. That is why you have that difference in velocity and the difference in muzzle energy. Now, the reason initially the FBI was going to switch all their guns over to the 10mm, but they found that the female recruits, the female agents for the FBI, could not handle the immense recoil that came with the 10mm round. They wanted to switch over for everybody, but some of the female agents just couldn't handle that big gigantic round. So They did a little bit of work with Smith & Wesson, and they were able to basically shrink the cartridge down a little bit. They kept the same diameter, so they would have something a little bit bigger than the 9mm, but they were able to shrink the cartridge down a little bit, put a little less powder in there, and basically make it a little more tame for the female agents in the FBI. And of course, usually whatever the FBI does, the rest of the police departments in the country follow suit. So you can see here that they're darn near the same thing, 10mm and 40 Smith, other than obviously the overall length. You'll also find that a lot of the bullets are very similar in weight as well. The big difference is going to be how much powder is behind it. Okay. All right. Next thing that I would like to compare to the 40 caliber here, here's our 40, is this beast. One of my favorite rounds of all time, the 45 Auto, or the 45 ACP, Automatic Colt Pistol. ACP. Now, you see the difference in diameter there. It's not significant, but it is enough. We got 0.40 here, and we got 0.45 here. So you've got basically 0.050 inches difference, 5 thousandths of an inch bigger in diameter here with the 45. So you can also see the difference in the rear of the case there. You can tell that the 45 is much bigger. There's multiple reasons why I love the 45 Auto. You can see that the cases are pretty close, not exactly the same, but pretty close, and the overall length is pretty close, but not quite the same. But the biggest reason why I love the 45 Auto is, number one, the size of the bullet that's heading down range, but also it's a time-proven cartridge. It's a time-proven design, and there is no other cartridge and bullet that has a higher number of one-shot stops than the 45 ACP. And God knows I don't ever want to have to defend myself. I'd rather live in a peaceful world. But if a police officer asks me what caliber do you think I should carry, for self-defense, I always recommend the 45, just because it is going to get the job done. Again, I hope no one ever has to do that, but if they do, if you have to defend your family or something, the 45 ACP, in my opinion, is usually the way to go, unless you can't handle that super heavy recoil. Or it's not super heavy. I should quantify that. The 45 ACP, it's not a super heavy recoil. I have some bullets down there that are super heavy, but the 45 ACP is more of a push. It's not a snap. There's a lot of these cartridges that are very snappy, but this one is not. It is a push. So just go to the range and try one. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's not what you think. Not at all. All right? Okay, moving on. So next, we have some of the big boys here. You see these big old beasts here? Let's pick these up and see what we have. All right? You're going to know some of these cartridges. You're going to know the names as soon as you hear them, okay? So, what do we have here? This one should look somewhat familiar to people. This is a simple 38 special. Now, it's a plus P, of course, but it is just a simple 38 special. Actually, I think this is a reload. But yeah, this is a 38 special, and it's got a reloaded bullet in it. You can see that there. It's just Hornady doesn't deal in solid lead only. So yeah, this is definitely a reload, but it works for illustration purposes of what it is. It's a 38 special with a 0.38 inch diameter bullet in it. It's got a cast lead round seated into the case itself. And right next to it, that was sitting down there, you'll see this big boy here. Now, this is just a reproduction of the round. It doesn't have a primer in it, but I'm using it for illustration purposes so you can see the difference in size. You see the 38 special here is, the case is probably about 1/8 of an inch shorter, and a significant amount less diameter there. And you can also see the bullet on the left also is, quite a bit bigger in diameter as well. So let's flip this guy over and see what it is. That is a Winchester 45 Colt. I'm sure you guys have heard of the 45 Colt, or as some people like to call it, the 45 Long Colt. Now, technically, 45 Long Colt is a misnomer. That is an incorrect statement. There is no such thing as a, quote, long Colt. But it's been said so long and been around so long that people have just made it real, made it so. But technically, the actual name for the round is 45 Colt. When I was in gunsmithing school, our teacher that was teaching us the first year pistol class, when someone said, "Oh, is that a 45 Long Colt?" in front of the whole class, he said, "There is no such thing as 45 Long Colt." And he got upset, and then he said, if you think that, then what about a 45 Short Colt? Is there such thing as a 45 Short Colt? And one of the guys in the back of the classroom raised his hand and said, "What about the 45 ACP?" He threw that guy out of class because I think, he had kind of a significant point there. But anyways, moving on, this is a 45 Colt. So what is this big old thing next to it? What is this big guy here? Because this one, there goes my 38. This one is looking like it's a little bit bigger in diameter, and it's looking like it's pretty close to the same length of case, but you can see there that there is no rim like there would be on a revolver cartridge. So what are we looking at here? What do you think we're looking at? This is a very famous caliber, the 50 AE. This round here goes in a 50 Desert Eagle, or a Desert Eagle 50. Everybody's heard of the Desert Eagle 50 cal. Everybody knows the big beast Desert Eagle 50, okay? That's what this is. This is one of the bullets for the 50 Desert Eagle. Now, you can see this is a significant bullet. This is a big round, and it is heavy too. Luckily, I actually happen to have one of these bullets that was extracted from the actual case itself, and it is right down here. So, you see, here's our bullet, and you can see how deep the bullet itself goes into the case. See how much deeper it goes into there. I mean, look at how much room there is for powder in there. There's, I mean, gosh, you got about 2/3 of the case available for powder. I mean, that is significant. But the size of that bullet is also significant, and it runs at a significant FPS and hits with a heck of a lot of force. So that is definitely one pistol caliber to consider if you're looking for something to, take down a polar bear or a grizzly bear. These would work perfectly for that. So, I don't know a lot of people that hunt grizzly bears or polar bears, but, you never know. You may live in Alaska, and you may say, hey, that's important to me. So, all right, what's next? What do we have? What's this big old guy here? Let's see. Well, we've got our 50 Desert Eagle here, and we've got what looks like it's pretty close to the same diameter. I mean, don't these look like they're pretty close to the same diameter? And they do. This one's got a rim on it, kind of like a revolver caliber, but it is a lot longer than the 50 Desert Eagle. So, a little bit bigger. So let's turn this one over and see what we got. This is the big beast 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. See that? 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. Now you can see why everyone is so impressed by the size and the strength behind the 500 Smith. It is a big round. It is a heavy hitting round. And consequently, they actually happen to use the same exact bullets in both of these cartridges. So you can see here how much powder will be behind that round, or behind that bullet. It is a significant amount of powder, a heck of a lot of powder is behind the 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. So Whew, that is a huge one. So there's the comparison between the 50 Desert Eagle and the 500 Smith. All right, so let's put that one back and this one there. What are these two big guys? Anybody wondering what these two big old beasts are here? Well, let's pick them up. Let's take a look. Now, one thing to consider is these are iconic. These are extremely iconic bullets, or iconic cartridges. The cartridge is iconic. The cartridge designation is iconic. The bullet design is, fairly modern, but you can see that even the 500 Smith & Wesson is not as big as these cartridges. These cartridges have more powder in them. So let's see, are they about the same diameter? Pretty close, pretty close to the same diameter. But it looks like the 500 is a little bit bigger diameter. So let's flip these things over and let's see what we got. See what we have here. 4570 Government. You guys ever heard of the 4570 Government round? These are it right here. Now this is a modern iteration. This is the Hornady, modern Hornady 4570 Government round. And of course you have the South Point jacketed 4570 here as well. And you can see the cannelure there, the little serrated marking that goes around each of these bullets. For the cartridge case mouth to around it, they can crimp that around there and really make it hold the bullet really well. So anyways, moving back to it, the 4570 has been around for quite a while. This is a gun that was used in the Old West. A cartridge that was used in the Old West. This is a cartridge that was used in a couple of skirmishes along the border. This cartridge has been used for quite a while. It was even used by our military, but it was favored by cowboys for its stopping power and its ability to put down big game without too much of a problem. Now granted, they were using lead bullets most of the time, stuff that they actually loaded themselves, things like this, the way that this one was cast and loaded in there themselves. This is the kind of stuff that they would do, cowboys that is. But the 4570 is definitely one of those bullets that is no joke. And you can see here, you see the Hornady round here, you can feel this little ridge right there. You see that line on the camera right there? Oh, there it goes. You see this line right here? That is the bottom of the bullet. You see the bullet is about that big. That is a huge bullet. And these things hit hard, man. There's a ton of powder behind these bullets. So definitely nothing to shake a stick at there. The other thing to consider is there are some companies, like the guys that make the Desert Eagle, Magnum Research, that make revolvers in the 4570 caliber, which to me is insane. I don't know how anybody would want to shoot that big of a caliber, but there are people out there that do want to shoot it and that do actually end up shooting it quite a bit. So that is something that is, really cool. Let's see, next up, let's get into the 30 carbine and the 5.7 by 28. 1 second and we'll do that. Okay, so the 30 carbine and the 5.7 by 28. Now, a lot of people probably know the 30 carbine from the World War II guns that shot it, like the M1 carbine. That is the prolific firearm that shot the 30 carbine bullet or round, or cartridge, whatever. You can see here that is probably where the bottom of the bullet is right there. These do not have a massive significant feet per second to them or a whole lot of muzzle energy that gets imparted onto the animal that you're hunting with it. But a lot of people really prize the 30 carbine and the M1 carbine rifle that shot it during World War II because It was really, really light recoiling. It had a decent mag capacity. You could get magazines with 10, 15, 20, or even 30 rounds. And, it was easy to maneuver in small spaces. A lot of guys liked using these in built-up urban areas. And keep in mind, the Nazis took over numerous countries and numerous cities in those countries. So our guys, the Allies, they had to do a whole lot of fighting from city to city in urban areas. So this little guy was a perfect solution for that. You can see it looks very similar to a revolver cartridge in its design, but it doesn't have a rim on the back like a cartridge would. And there's some information saying that the 30 carbine cartridge was originally developed because it was going to be put into a pistol, kind of a mix between a pistol and a really small rifle. They were supposed to be doing something like that for officers, NCOs, and tank crews, but it never came about. They just developed the M1 carbine and later on the M2 carbine, the fully automatic version, and that is how the 30 carbine round was used. Moving on, at some point, NATO decided that the 5.56 NATO round just wasn't enough. They needed something that, they needed a smaller weapon, but they needed to still have a decent amount of punch behind the round. They wanted a PDW, or a personal defense weapon type firearm that they could have for their executive protection details and diplomatic protection, things like that. So they wanted something smaller than the 5.56, but they still wanted rifle like characteristics to the round itself. So after a lot of design, debate, and work, FN came up with the 5.7 by 28 caliber round. Now you can see here 5.7 by 28. FN designed this thing with a 5.7 diameter round. Okay, the 28 is the measurement from the top of the case to the bottom of the case there. That's 28 millimeters from there to there. These rounds were meant to be used with an armor-piercing bullet. They were not meant to be used for hunting. They're not meant to be used for much of anything other than in their armor-piercing configuration. But because we are civilians, we are not allowed to have the armor-piercing bullets for these. To put, and if you do have some, you can't put them in your pistol. If you get caught with them in a FN57 pistol, you are in a hell of a lot of trouble. Now, currently, as of today, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but as of today, you can legally own armor-piercing ammunition if you're using it in a rifle. That is one thing, but if you're using it in a pistol, that is 100% illegal. So, again, just information. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but moving on. The FN57 is a great little round. It is cool, and I actually happen to prefer the FN57 in the pistol configuration. I like the pistol. They do make an FN57 rifle, the PS90, but I like the FN57 pistol myself. It doesn't look like we're going to get enough time to finish up the stuff that I want to finish up, but I'll do another video on this coming up. We'll see you next time as we go deeper inside the Gunmetal Armory.